Good morning, it's Norma Cowie here, and it's Wednesday, therefore it is Norma Talks. I want to preface before I begin doing my talk that the ideas that I am expressing are mine, that we're talking about a topic that very often has different belief systems about them, but I'm going to share what I have come to find out. Didn't believe that in my childhood or early adulthood. But as time went on, I began to find a lot of different things that were going and experiencing, and I had to shift a lot of my ideas and my concepts. And so that is about death and dying and suicide, and I'll explain why. A person that I've known for many, many years and have spoken with the phone on the phone often. I've seen her in person. It wasn't like a friend, but someone that has been around in my life for many, many, many years. And she died. She passed away this week. Her son phoned me to tell me, actually, just before I was going on for mental mind treatments. Plus, I then got an email from, again, a client friend who wanted to know about suicide because she had been to a memorial where the person had um, passed away with suicide. And so I emailed something back. But I always know that if one person has a question, many people have the question. And so I really wanted to go through some of the things that I've discovered and found, just to maybe put your minds at rest, and at the same time may make you feel a little uncomfortable because it conflicts with certain religious ideas in particular. The first thing I want to say about things that I discovered is that the soul goes on and on and on. I have done a number, and quite a lot of numbers actually, of what I call soul readings, where I follow the line. Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated this morning. Follow the line back to when we first spring into being as a soul and then come forward. And I have learned so much from doing those. And I had read actually quite a few years ago now of a man in Korea who did that. And so I thought, well, if he can do that, maybe I can. And I started doing it. So it was very informative. Found out that a lot of us have lives where we're in space, that there are a lot of more mental planets out there than emotional planets like Earth, that there are spaces where they're just beautiful, where we create artwork or we just healing spaces, all of that, all in this huge, big universe. Very different from our Earth experience, but they're out there. And I've seen them, experienced them, and been able to relate them to people so they understand themselves a lot better. Now, one of the first experiences I had about with a person dying was my father-in-law. He had cancer and was in hospital, and my children were quite young, and we would go over and see him. Anyway, one day I was there by myself, and it was an afternoon, I remember, and I know I didn't even know I was psychic then, by the way. I noticed there was a lady with red hair. And to me, it was sort of, oh, there's a lady with red hair here. Okay. So I went back and I said to my mother-in-law, who's the lady with red hair? Like, I didn't know anybody with red hair. And I had met my father-in-law when he was elderly. And so she said to me, oh, his mother had red hair. I went, oh, okay. So actually it was my father-in-law was my husband's stepfather, but we all loved him, and my kids loved him. And he had calipers. He had polio as a child. He was the second person in Canada to ever have polio, and he walked with caliper and canes and stuff like that. But anyway, I was sort of watching, and one day I was there, I noticed that he was walking Now, remember, it's not in the physical, it was up in the non-physical. He was walking without his calipers and his cane. And I came home and I said, we have to go and see Andy today because he's going to pass over. And so not only was his mother around, but he had to learn that he could walk, let go of those. And one of the things I have learned over time, that when it comes time to go, and I have talked about this before, regret and guilt are the two things we really want to be able to clear. And so him being able to walk, realize he could walk, I would watch them. And I don't know who was helping him walk, but they were teaching him that, yes, you can walk now. You can walk, because he was in the etheric realm, the in-between realm. Once I saw that he could walk, and he began to realize, hey, I can walk without all the having to hold on to things, I knew that it was time that he would be leaving. That was my first real experience with close-up death. Even though I came from a large family, that were much older, and people were always dying. But I didn't understand, and I didn't really, would you say, they didn't touch me because there weren't a lot of people that I was close to at that point. That happened later. So your soul goes on. Now, a lot of people have asked me over time about suicide. I'm smiling to myself because I'm always, I had been, maybe not so much now, but thinking about things, about this or that, and asking for answers, asking for, where does this work? And I had been doing a lot of thinking about how we are taught in metaphysics that we create our reality. And I was lecturing on past life regressions and past lives, which was a topic that I did a lot of speaking on and a lot of workshops on, and learned a great deal from. But I was speaking on, and to a group of people, a psychic group of people. And out of my mouth came, well, if you believe that you create reality, then really, in a sense, every death is a suicide. I have to tell you, I was never invited back to speak to this group, and I realized I better be careful what I say sometimes. But it became if you choose how you go out, if you set it up, then to me that criteria fits. But really, in reality, what I discovered is that we all have a guide of some form, whether it's a family member that's passed over, whether you have, like me, people that come and teach you things that are not of physical form. Then what begins to happen is that when it gets time for you to make your transition, then they come. Now, there's a lot of reports about that. People who have had near-death experiences where they have gone to the other side and they have seen the people waiting, that they have seen Pacific guides maybe, and often be told, sorry, you're not ready yet. You have to go back. Some very famous psychics actually talk about that. And they'll say how they've died maybe several times, and they keep saying, no, not your time yet. Go back. You got work to do. Get back to your work. So it's like a big brother, saying, sorry, you got to go back. I haven't had that. The closest I've ever come to even thinking that was actually during COVID. I was away in Mexico when all the COVID things started. I was on just a week's holiday, but I wasn't feeling well down there. And when I came back, it progressively got worse. And we now know that it was COVID. The only thing was I didn't have the bad cough, but that's because mostly I haven't been a lung person. Like I haven't had weak lungs, even though I cough more now than I ever did. So what happened when I got home, I was not feeling good. COVID was just beginning. When I phoned my doctor and said, I'm not feeling very good, she said, are you coughing? No, well, don't go to the hospital if you're not coughing. You're coughing, go to the hospital. And thank goodness, knowing what I know now, I didn't go. But I began to develop a fever. First fever in my life. I've never had one before or since. But during the night, for several days, I would have these fevers. And one night, I was really in a fever. And I began to review my life. I had scenes come at me, from what had happened before. And I remember I was still lying there, like, I remember getting logical and said, am I dying? Because we do know that you tend to review, one of the things in the death process is to review your life. And then I went, hold on, I have nobody here. There's no guide, there's no daughter, there's no mother, there's nobody. No, I'm not dying. And I think I made a big decision then, because it could have gone maybe worse, and I maybe have gone transition, but it was like, no, there was nobody there to help me. Now, that's the thing to recognize. You don't make that transition without help. Family members that have gone before, other guides or people that you've been close to that have gone before. Guides are over there. It's not like they're being here. They're just there. Always there's somebody that comes for you. And I've seen that over and over again. And I've heard that over again. And it's like, no matter how you're ending your life, if you're choosing to say, this is it, I can't deal with things anymore. I can't deal with the depression. I can't deal with the up and down, whatever it is that's giving you pressure. And yes, we often think that, well, surely you could resolve that. But sometimes emotional hurt, emotional pain, if it's not totally and really effectively dealt with, you just can't stand. And so therefore it's like, no more of this life, no more. And then you transition, and you'll go learn some more things, and then come and do it again and see if you can this time apply what you know. But when we recognize the eternality of the soul, when we recognize that we've had lifetime after lifetime, some people have died so many different ways and gone through so many different things. And yet, why do we keep coming back? And often I feel it's because we don't really resolve and work to raise, maybe we can say, our vibration. Privileged, actually. I feel very privileged to be able to help people clear out some of these old things. It began with my journey doing past life regressions, which after my tarot, which I had explored and learned, did some astrology, realized I wasn't really mental enough for that. Isn't that terrible? I just I was more of an intuitive, so the tarot worked best for me. And the next thing was past life regression, studied with two people and learned some things, read some books, and began to apply and learned my own way of doing them as well. And it was informative. When I first began, and how I was originally taught, was just basically looking at lives as a curiosity. And then I began to realize the death process was the big point. That's where we're all heading. That's where we're all leading, to that point when we leave this incarnation and go into, we might call it the unknown, but we go into that other realm to take a look, to learn and figure out where we're going next. And so to start the process again. It's a interesting process that I began to learn. I began to learn to take a look at what we learned in the life, to any guilt, any regret that we carry, and to let that go. And then one of the things that I do with my past life regression work is, when we've established all that, is to take a look at where you hold it in yourself. Where do you hold that grief? Where do you hold the guilt? Where do you hold whatever it is that's there? Where? And then, because I work with light, which is another word for love, light and love, you hear people sometimes say, then you bring the light in to clear that from your system. I have gone to work with certain members of people who are close to me, and they won't go inside enough. They just refuse. And so consequently, very often they do choose a way out, which is by their own hand, one way or the other. And as far as I'm concerned, if you can't learn here, go learn over there, because there's schools over there. There's places there for you to learn. so that you become aware. So when you kind of come back to undergo some more things, you're much more aware and perhaps more willing to go inside. It is not for us to judge another person's pain. We've all had pain, emotional. I'm talking about, well, for this physical pain too, yes. But it's the emotional pain. I was fortunate that I was taught very early in my personal journey about letting go. Doesn't mean I have always let go quickly or easily. Sometimes we kind of hang on to things, or we get in our head. Probably our mind, our mental side is probably a little bit more an enemy sometimes than a friend, because it likes to get onto things and, chew them up and eat them up and not resolve them. Mainly because there's not a balance between the emotional and mental in our systems. There's so much we can learn as we move through. But in the death process, it's about letting go of this world. It's about willing to surrender. Now, surrender is another word. Is a word I didn't like for a long, long time. People would say to me, surrender, and I would like gnash my teeth almost. What do you mean surrender? I don't know. I got to work this through. I got to get this. I was kind of determined one way or the other. And eventually I softened up and learned that surrender was good. You surrender your pain. You surrender into love. You allow the love to come in and transform the pain, to transform what's going on. And then what happens after you've done that is you're able to work with the mental side to have that also let go. So lots and lots of changes that are happening. And right now the suicide, people are way, way up, apparently. I mean, I kind of read that somewhere and I was thinking, oh, that happens. But we have a lot of judgment about it. We have a lot of judgment based on a lot of the, you might say, religious side of things, the rules. Some religions are very, very strict, and so no one wants to upset that. Other religions are a little more lax, but very often they're very judgmental. And I understand that. I can understand why that is. But at the same point, we don't want to be often getting into an accident, and maybe where other people are getting hurt because we are not assuming our own responsibility. To be responsible for ourselves and to ensure that other people are safe, and we're not having to create other scenarios where we don't feel responsible for what's going on in relation to ourselves. Death is not easy for people who are left behind. I know I've had people who I've been close to be on the other side. And the good thing for me is I know they're on the other side. And I know that they're there. Now, there's some very good Christian movies that I've watched over time. And there's one I really, really, well, there's several I've really liked, but there's one I've really, really liked. And that was about a gentleman who actually was in a very bad car accident. It's got quite a story to it. Which I won't tell you I'll tell you this part, but there's another part to it I really love. It just warms my heart. And I may just tell you that in a sec. The thing with him is that he dies. He's in this bad car accident and he dies. And when he goes into, and he's a Christian, so he's very, very clear on, the Christian element of passing over. And all the people that he had known in his whole life who had passed on were there to greet him. Everyone, his family, his friends, people he went to school with, people he didn't even know he'd passed on were there. It was like a huge crowd waiting to gather to him. Now, this is his experience. And then he was told he had to go back because his work wasn't done. Now, he was a pastor and he went back. So now I'm going to go back to the other part of that story. In this car accident, apparently, like, his vehicle was really mangled and he was there. They were having a hard time getting him sort of out. And there was another pastor that had driven up. And the pastor went up to the highwayman who was looking and said, "Look, I'm a pastor. Is it all right if I pray? Come and get as close as I can and pray. And the highwayman said, sure, just don't interfere with what we're trying to do. And yeah, sure, you can pray. So he prayed. Now, when the other man came back and then had a long, long recovery because it was very badly mangled up, he began to go and talk about his experience of this life after death and everything. And he had heard of this man, this pastor who had prayed for him. So he happened to meet him. And he said, I really want to thank you for holding my hand. It really, really helped. And the pastor said, I didn't hold your hand. I couldn't get anywhere near you because of the car and stuff. And he said, well, somebody held my hand. It was what had me hold on. And they both looked at each other and grinned, because we know who came to hold his hand. And held his hand in that moment. Boy, I'm getting teary here. We are not taught enough about the aspect of death and dying. We're not taught enough to realize that even when we die, no matter how, what, when, or where, that we continue on because the soul is eternal. The soul is on a journey. It is learning, it is creating, it is becoming. And the key is to realize that you're forever. And it's like enjoying and coming into the awareness of how much more there is. And when you have people who pass away, die by whatever means, it's just their little journey into the next evolution of who they are. Some people stay in between lives a long time, some do not. I've actually had, even when I was being shown how conceptions happen and how things move, that I've had see people leave one life and just zoom into another, because in conceptions, there's a light that comes up, and in that light, everything about the life is shown. And that's how very often a soul will pick. But most don't look. That's what I found. People don't always look. And when I was redoing my conception, I chose my father because I knew him. And my mother was a delightful, joyful woman. And also it was far away from Germany where I just died. So there was that. It was like, I went to the other side of the planet, please. I don't want to be doing a lot of other things there. And it's and so in a way, it's like realizing that a lot of what we're taught is probably not always exactly how things are, but the love vibration transcends it all, transcends through the earth, transcends into our passing, transcends into the love that is out there at a level. And we will move to the level we are spiritually. So you could be a multi-millionaire, or even today it's billionaires. But if your soul has not embraced humanity, has not embraced your own humanity or the humanity of the people, truly embraced it, if you haven't found humility and the recognition of many, many spiritual principles, big breath, because you still can only evolve to the matter of your spiritual awareness. The love for your fellow man. People talk about it, but many people act on it, and they do. Many people just go breeze through their life, whatever. And then they go into classes and they go into awareness on the other side. Your learning does not stop, because your soul is forever evolving. And when you get to leave this particular vibration of Earth, which isn't always easy to get out of because it's an emotional planet, and there's things we have to learn about how to deal and cope with our feelings and understand that, then we can go on. Anyway, I hope that in some ways I've answered some questions. I don't have anything written down. I'm just, as usual, talking from what I know. And I do, again, want to say these are my ideas and my concepts of what I've come to terms with or learned through all my lives. I've done a lot of past life work for myself. So that's written up in one of my books called Many Lives and Many Ways of Remembering Them, as I poured myself into sobs in Paris as I've wept in other places in the earth, as I've had memories come up and recognize that my journey that I've had here on planet Earth at times, and clearing out old pains and old regrets, letting go of regrets, letting go of guilt. All of those things are so important in our journey, so that when we do transcend, we can move into those higher levels of understanding and learning, and perhaps spend a longer time in between before we either move on into another reality of planets, etc., or come back to experience the emotionalism of this world. I want you to have a good week. I want you to be where. I really also want to thank those new subscribers that have come on. I appreciate you. And also for those that share regularly what I say. I just wish you well, and I'll be back on Sunday for a Sunday Thoughts. Bye now.